Welcome to my mausoleum. Here I share with you scary stories, many of which are said to be true. If people think you're kind of weird too, then hit subscribe to join the family. So get comfortable as we delve into the darkness together. Here we go.
Don't go into that blue room or the Jellybone man will get you.
40 years later, as a fully grown man with kids of my own, those words should be easy to dismiss. They should be easy to shrug off and laugh at, or to simply ignore as a stupid childhood superstition. I should, all these years later, be able to see those words, that name and that character for what they really were. Just a spook story told by my grandmother to keep me and my sister in line. Those words shouldn't affect me, but they do. They do because as much as my grandmother might not have meant to, she scared the living hell out of us. As kids, the Jellybone man, our own personal family bogeyman, haunted our nightmares for years. Looked at now, it does seem sort of stupid. Even the name sounds more like a kid's cartoon than anything that would actually scare you. Yet there was, and still is, always something. Something in the way that Granny said that name. The way she would twist her sinewed, knuckly hand into a thing that looked like a claw. Something in the way she would drag out the vowels so that the word seemed stretched and warped, becoming long and ill-made. Something about that final, unspecific threat. The Jellybone man will get you. Granny never said what get you actually meant. I guess she didn't have to. We both already knew. It meant that given the chance, he'd drag us up to the blue room and feast upon our flesh. Whatever he actually was, one thing was for certain. He ate the meat of children. I should explain that according to my granny, the Jellybone man lived in the blue room, a sort of attic space at the top of her terraced house. The room itself, which was basically a box room, was separated from the second floor, where the bathroom was, by a second flight of narrow, dimly lit stairs. It got its name from the fact that the inside walls, even the ceiling, had been painted entirely blue by the previous owner. This was something I only discovered 6 months ago when I entered the room for the very first time. I was accompanied by an estate agent in the full light of day. As a child, I would never have dared. My gran clearly worried that us kids might find something up there if we went exploring, something with which to poison or injure ourselves, decided that the easiest way to keep us from that out-of-bounds place was not to install a lock, but instead to install a gatekeeper. A monster and a bogeyman. Something so simplistically terrifying that we wouldn't dare venture up that second flight of stairs. What she didn't realise, of course, was that the idea of the Jellybone man scared us so badly that we didn't even want to go up that first flight of stairs either. I remember at times at 7 years old, when unable to hold my bladder any longer, I would leave the safety of the living room and head towards those stairs. I remember how I would heave back the heavy fire door, hearing my gran's encouragement, saying what a big boy and how brave and how strong I was. I recall how, having slipped quickly through the gap, I would hear the door click, firm and close behind me. And then how when that door shut, I would feel anything but brave. Faced with the dark and cut off from the others, I would feel instead a wave of utter panic as I was left suddenly and awfully alone. Alone, that is, except for him. Before the door closed, the sounds and the safety of other people was still close. The hum and buzz of the half-muted TV was still there. The garbled chatter of my parents and gran talking about this subject or the other, and the faint sound of cars going by outside. All of those sounds were normal and safe. Once the door shut behind you, though, everything was quiet. Everything was still. Suddenly, in the dim half-light cast by the single bulb, the whole world seemed to be made from hush, a muted place of silence and shadows, where at the top of those steep, narrow stairs, you knew that he, the Jellybone Man, was waiting. The stairs themselves were sealed in on two sides. Just the steps, the blank wall to your left and right, and a turn to the landing at the top. A blind corner leading down to the bathroom and around which you knew anything could be lurking. Often I would climb those stairs slowly, trying as best as I could not to make a sound. Desperate not to alert the predator waiting on the third floor that its prey was somewhere below. As I moved, I would listen so hard that my ears seemed to ache, listening for the faintest whisper of movement, a shift or a brush of fabric, the sound of something crouching slowly in the shadows. A tacky click of moisture as the thing licked its lips. It's hard to explain, but that quiet, that hush was never quite silent. It was too full, too pregnant with potential to really be silence. Rather, it was almost silence. The awful, deliberate hush made by things that wait and watch. The sound made by predators. A complete and utter silence that still feels occupied. Rushing to the bathroom, I would sit on the pot, trying as best as I could to force out more quickly than it would come, desperate to free myself from being pinned in one place, frantic to escape and sprint as fast as I could back down those stairs, back to the door, to the living room, and to safety. Often I would rush back with my pants still half down, only 2/3 finished with the job, because I was just that scared. I hated having to sit there in that vulnerable position, where from my seat I could literally see the bottom step of that second flight. There, across the landing, the second set of stairs that led up to the blue room, where the Jellybone Man was waiting. I just knew he was waiting for me. I remember I would sit there staring fixedly at that bottom step, at the tattered piece of carpet, the worn wooden banister, and at the shadows cast by the bathroom light. I remember I would pray that that shadow wouldn't move, certain that one day, from somewhere within that shadow, slender claws would slowly emerge as the Jellybone Man finally slunk down from the blue attic room. Precisely what the Jellybone Man was, I could never really say. Like most bogeymen used to frighten children, part of his power came from the fact that he had no definite shape. This monster couldn't be pinned down. He was at once nothing and everything, always indistinct. A dark shadow with talons and teeth. If pressed, I'd have said there was something melted about his appearance, as if his face were palsied or slack. I sometimes thought of a loose rubber mask, of pink-brown flesh beneath a hairless scalp, oozing over and dribbling down the cheeks, like the trickling mess of an undercooked egg. as if his face was made of wax beneath a blazing flame. I thought of a smile too wide for the face, stretched by the very number and enormity of the teeth. I also thought there was something vaguely hunched, slumped, bent or crooked about his movements, the way he slunk and crept. Where I got these ideas I couldn't really say, nor could I ever be more specific. Given a pen and paper, I doubt that either I or my sister would have been able to draw this creature, and yet we both knew what he was. He was the child eater up there in the dark. It was partly his shapeless nature, that amorphous blur that made him seem so real. That and the thoughtless way in which the adults confirmed his existence, even reinforcing the truth of his threats. Unlike the other monsters, the ones your parents said weren't real, the Jellybone Man concerningly got no such denial. Whilst your folks might tell you that the things in the movies were just men in masks, that the creature under your bed was just your imagination, or that the footsteps you heard was just a sound in the pipes, when it came to the Jellybone Man, they said no such thing. With him, the script was different. With him, they never doubted, all they did was warn. They did this in the same way they warned you not to go into the road, not to pet stray dogs or go too close to the fire. He was a real danger. The only monster your parents admitted was real. When I think about it now, that would be enough. Enough for me to still feel a small pang of fear whenever thinking of those words. A hangover from those childhood terrors. But for me, it's more than that. Around 6 months ago, my grandmother died. She outlived my parents, who tragically died in a car accident when I was still in my teens. She had decided to leave what little she had in the world to her grandchildren. So, along with some precious but meagre savings and a few sentimental items, my sister and I inherited her old terraced house. The house where, on the 3rd floor, the blue room was still presumably standing. Obviously upset by my grand's passing and having no real attachment to the place, I contacted my sister to suggest that we sell it. This would have been a simple concept, were it not for her insistence that if we did, we had to do so with a warning. At first, I thought she was joking, making a reference to our childhood fears and trying to lighten the mood. I soon saw that she was indeed deadly serious. If we sell that place, I want it stated clearly in the contract that there is something in that blue room, she said with not a hint of mirth. I'm serious, she insisted. When I tried to laugh off the idea, telling her she was being stupid, her eyes filled with tears. Without saying a word, she pulled down the shoulder of her jumper. This revealed a huge semicircular scar that stretched from the base of her neck to the top of her arm. It was formed by a series of what looked to be healed-over puncture wounds, as if she had been jabbed at multiple times. Jesus, I remember saying, realizing that I'd never seen this scar before in my life, nor had I heard of any injury that may have caused it. Pressing her lips together, my sister shook her head. When I was 21, she said, I asked Grandad to store some of my stuff in the attic room. She said this without raising her eyes, making it clear that she had deliberately avoided using the room's proper name. A few months later, when I came to collect it, I went up alone to that room. Here she paused, hesitating as if thinking twice about sharing the rest of her story. And then, after a long sigh, she continued. It's daft, but even then, after all those years, I was still scared. I went up really slowly, and when it came time to go in, I actually thought about calling down for Grandad to come up and help me. But I didn't. In the end, I told myself I was just being stupid. I walked in to get my stuff. The light switch was broken, so I left the door open to get some light from the corridor, but she stopped and reaching across the table, gripping my arm so tightly that the next day the skin was bruised. Something moved up there, and I swear on my kids' lives, something in the corner of that room moved. I don't know what it was, but it sort of tumbled towards me. I tried to turn away and get out of the room and back down the stairs. But I just felt this pain, like a clamp on my back, and I tripped forward and fell. They all said that I hurt my shoulder in the fall, that I must have just caught it on the banister, or on a nail or something, but tell me those marks don't look like... Again, she paused, as if teetering on the very edge of the point she didn't really want to make. Tell me they don't look like teeth, like a bite mark from a mouth, but I don't know, too wide. If you really want to sell the place, fine, but I really think you need to put something in the agreement. Something to just, I don't know, just to let them know. And that was the last time we ever spoke about that house. I put it on the market a month later and sold it a month after that. A few weeks later, I sent my sister her half of the money. She never asked whether I put that note in the contract, and I never told her that I didn't. And that should have been all. I should at that point have been able to forget all about those stupid childhood fears, the Jellybone Man and his blue room. It should have been forgotten, but it wasn't. A few weeks ago, I met my estate agent on the high street. We said hello, and after a few pleasantries, he mentioned the old house that he'd sold for me and my sister. He said that the new owners were very happy in the place, that they were a young couple in their mid-20s, and that they had started complete renovations. He also said that they had plans to start a family. According to what I've been told, that blue room at the top of the house is soon to become a nursery. Something about that revelation made my blood run cold. The idea has haunted me ever since. The thought of a baby resting in its cot, whilst clawed, slender fingers creep slowly towards its face. So disturbed was I by the idea that I did think about calling the couple, thinking that maybe I could tell them about the room, about the story and why they should maybe put the child somewhere else. I probably would have called them too, had someone not called me first. At first the line was dead with only the sound of shallow breathing. But then a voice I can only describe as sounding wet could be heard on the other end. First it chuckled in a horrible mocking laugh. Then came those awful words.
Don't dare go up in the blue room, or the Jellybone Man will get you.
After the caller hung up, a long silence followed. A silence that went on for a very, very long time.